negative there, and in a way, an indirect question. You're not sure of the answer. I don't know what to do. Subjunctive. That's a kind that has basically disappeared in modern French. So we've got a series of them in Old French. Almost anything that's independent, the equivalent of God bless you, totally gone in modern French. You have to start with the complementizer que, that, and everyone knows that you're really leaving out I hope that, I believe that, I regret that, whatever. Okay? Except, again, you have the same long live the king, vive le roi, with a nice subjunctive. And so there are some frozen relic forms, but on the whole, independent subjunctives are gone. They're all over Latin. You get a lot of them in Old French. By classical French, 17th century French, they're gone. So one of the ways of thinking about the subjunctive is to say that the category is simply shrinking from Latin to modern French. Fewer and fewer different uses of the subjunctive, more and more doubt about whether something should take the subjunctive or the indicative. And there are lots of reasons for it. I was being a little flippant earlier, and I said, oh, it's because it's too complex to learn. Well, Spanish manages to keep two different past subjunctives. And they're there. They have not disappeared. It's, one person's complexity is another person's matter of fact. Of course, we do it all the time, which is not what I'm saying about the past subjunctive, but certainly Spanish has it, French does not. Another thing that happens in French, which leads to shrinking of the subjunctive, is that verb forms in the most common verb class, for those of you who know French or other Romance languages, in the first conjugation, ER in French, are, have, the subjunctive and the indicative forms fall together because of sound changes. So it's harder to figure out whether something's a subjunctive or not. And that gets you to, if you don't have, if you're hearing it from parents as you're learning language, you start thinking, oh, indicative is much, much more frequent. Therefore, when I get to verbs where there should be a subjunctive form, I'll use the indicative, because that's what I hear, not differentiating one from the other. I'm not saying it has disappeared, because it hasn't. I was in Paris 10 days ago, and I heard lots of nice subjunctives on the radio and television. Not everyone listens to them, but I do, and there they were. Okay, and now let me add another problem with French, which is another statement about French, which is that in addition to this gradual shrinking, there has been some expansion in the use of the subjunctive. And I'll mention one, and then I'll give you some examples of another one. One of them, and when I say recent, I'm talking recent relative to Old French, which stopped being used in 1500 approximately. So 19th century, 19th, 20th century. You get the subjunctive. Remember I said that the schematic meaning was something like uncertainty of outcome. So among other ways in which the subjunctive is used and has been used since Latin is after the conjunction after. We'll eat after he gets here. Subjunctive in Latin, subjunctive in Old French, subjunctive in modern French. Why? Well, we can't be sure he's getting here. That seems to be the motivation for it. However, and also with until. We can't do anything until he gets here. Again, uncertainty of outcome. Will he get here? Won't he get here? It has spread to after. We'll do it after he gets here. Well, there's less uncertainty after marks a point at which something has happened. It now takes the subjunctive and takes it very regularly. It's not that people hesitate. If you look at, a sort of very bad rule, way of checking it, but I'll offer it anyway, is if you look at first-year French books written for foreign students, after is without discussion. It's simply in the list of triggers of words after which you use the subjunctive, which are followed by the subjunctive. So it's embedded. Textbooks have a way of not taking out things after they've stopped being embedded, but I think you can use this as a little bit of a rule, of an indication. The other one, and it's one that's been fascinating me, is that you get the subjunctive with the verb to hope. I'm looking at Michael, and who else here is francophone? Michael particularly, and he hasn't exploded, which is nice. If I tell this to native French people, on the whole, they say, no, 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 you don't. You do. Whatever they say. Latin, it tended to be the future. And in fact, even old-fashioned French books will say you use the future after to hope. It's the same verb as to wait for. Etymologically, it's the same verb as to wait for. It's espérer in French. And you can see that that would make another little nice case study across languages of meaning change. It is spreading to a subjunctive marker. And at first I thought I was imagining it. And then I started digging around, and I found websites devoted to examples of espérer, to hope, and the subjunctive. And what pleased me was the website said they pulled their examples from the standard good usage prescriptivist Grevis. So it's not just people making them up. And what I've given you here is two of them, 5A and B. One from Alfred Camus, so 1940s, 1950s, and one from Louis Aragon, a poet. I marked the subjunctives in bold, and I gave you translations, so that you see that it is not just careless spoken French, but it's also literary French. I would argue that this is where schemas come into it. That the schematic meaning, the abstraction you can make of subjunctive, has shifted over time from this uncertainty of outcome to something broader, which is subjectivity. I am inserting myself with a comment into what I'm saying about the action. And once you've got that, you can see where hope comes in. I mean, where do you draw the line between regret and hope? Or I'm delighted and I hope. And that's where you get, because there's some kind of schematic abstract in people's minds, it allows for meanings like the meaning of the subjunctive being added with espérer, to hope, to be extended. 5 minutes more for another example? Okay. My last example, if you don't like it, blame my husband. He came up with it first.
Go for it.
I think it's cute. And I then put it together. So you can't blame him for the examples. There is something going on in English. And I'm going to do something that historical linguists aren't supposed to do. And I'm going to make a rather mild prediction. There are 3 words in English which, in at least fast speech, and probably more than we realize in just normal discourse when we're not being terribly formal, are all reducing to oh. Schwa, for those who follow such things. First one is in 6A, and it's the English word to as an infinitive marker. This is the strongest, best developed of them.